Hello and welcome into the Detroit Lions schedule release show presented by Lions Experiences. I am your host, Tori Petry. It is one of the most exciting days of the NFL offseason calendar because it is the day that we get to fill our calendars with what to expect from the coming year of Lions football. At 7:45 p.m. tonight on the dot, that video will be dropping, revealing the Detroit Lions schedule for 2021. We can't wait to share it with you. We can't wait to break it all down. We'll be discussing everything to expect from the schedule tonight. We'll have a couple of guests joining me tonight to break down what to look for when that schedule comes out. And then when it does, we'll break down what we are looking at and what to expect from this 2021 season. We want you guys to stay involved in the show all night long. So that's why we're starting things off with a little bit of a trivia question, schedule related, of course. So here's your trivia question for tonight, guys. We want you to answer which year began the scheduling of the NFL's Thursday night kickoff game, indicating the start of the regular season. Chime in the comments there on YouTube and on Facebook, and we will give you the answer to that question a little bit later in the show. We also want to give you a refresher of the who behind the Lions schedule before we give you the win. Remember, 7:45 is when you will be able to see that video that reveals the win of the Lions schedule. But let's toss those who's up on the board and see who the Lions opponents are for 2021. Of course, we already know who the home opponents are and who the away opponents are. You got those NFC North opponents there, both home and away. And then take a look at the other opponents the Lions have on their schedule. You see that bottom line is a little bit uneven because there is an extra game this year. Don't forget, this is the first schedule release of the 18-week season for the NFL. So that extra little Broncos symbol down there is on there because the NFL added that 17th game this season, and the Broncos is the Lions' 17th game. Now, we don't know what week of the season it's going to be yet, but we do know that's the additional game on the Lions schedule this year. So lots of exciting matchups to look forward to, but we want to hear from you guys. What is the matchup that you guys are most looking forward to? You can chime in on our Twitter poll. We've got a poll going on Twitter right now. If you go to @Lions, you can tell us which game you're most looking forward to this season. Here's your options. That poll is already in progress. You can tell us whether you're looking forward to that home opener versus the San Francisco 49ers. That is, of course, the one game on the schedule that we already know about so far. The Lions will open the season against the San Francisco 49ers at home. That's the one that we know, and we will let you know the rest of them at 7:45 p.m. So are you looking forward to that one? Are you looking forward to that Thanksgiving matchup? Not sure who that will be yet. Or are you looking forward to Lions at Rams? I think a lot of people have their eyes on when that game will be. But if there's another one, make sure you chime in and put other. Let us know in the replies which game it is that you're looking forward to. Guys, we've got so much coming up for you in this schedule release show, including previewing what to look for when that schedule comes out, and then breaking down each matchup and how the schedule pans out after we see that schedule release video at 7:45 p.m. Don't go away, guys. We'll be right back with a little analysis. Since we're talking about the schedule, we have to say we could not be more excited to get fans back into Ford Field. Since you've been gone, we've been working to upgrade the stadium to meet your health and safety needs, as well as elevate your game day experience. From premier access to a completely cashless ecosystem to personalized packaging of your favorite game day foods, our premium suites offer the best experience in the building. Every suite offers a comfortable guest experience, which is perfect for single game use, business development, client retention, employee appreciation needs, and each of them offer an unparalleled view of the game. You can also take advantage of a year-round entertainment platform that doesn't stop after game day. Enjoy exclusive access for every Detroit Lions home game, plus 365-day access to Ford Field and all its events, only guaranteed to suite owners. We're excited to get everyone back in Ford Field for live football. If you're thinking about a premium partnership or want to experience game day in a suite, visit DetroitLionsSuites.com to tailor your next great entertainment experience. welcome back into the Detroit Lions schedule release show presented by Lions Experiences. I'm Tori Petry. And if you guys watch that and are getting a little bit excited about attending Lions games this season, we're going to throw this QR code up on the screen so you guys can scan it using your cell phones, and you'll get to go straight to the website that will give you all the information you need to know about booking yourself a premium suite membership for the 2021 season. We'll leave that code up on the screen for you guys so you can get started with that process. All right, now it is time to start breaking down this 2021 schedule. We don't know the dates yet, but we're going to start talking about the opponents. And for that, we are going to bring in Twentyman and Mike O'Hara from DetroitLions.com. Gentlemen, this is one of the most exciting days for me on the NFL offseason calendar. Obviously, you got the NFL draft. That's probably the most exciting of them all. But when it comes to things that we talk about and pieces of news, Tim, I think the schedule release is up there.
It is. And like you mentioned, we've known the who for a long time, but now you get to know the when. Now you get to start plotting as a fan. What road trip do you want? What games are you going to buy? What's the tough stretch of the schedule? Who's playing on Thanksgiving? Who do we open with? Who do we close with? And so I think that's the fun part of the schedule release is you get so excited about fall football, right? But this kind of puts it in place for me. Now you know everything that's going to happen, the times, the dates, the opponents, and you can kind of just schedule out your football season as you see fit. It's a fun time.
Absolutely. We sure are hoping to see fans back in the stands in the fall. We'll see how that pans out. Mike, when you look at the schedule, when it comes out, what is the first thing that you look at?
Well, obviously, for being in Detroit for so long, the first thing I look at is who are they going to play on Thanksgiving Day? That's the one we know when that game is. It's Thanksgiving Day when you're trying to put this whole puzzle together. But that to me is really the first one I look at. Then I start to look at the Monday night games, the Thursday night games, the Saturday night games, all of that. How many primetime games the Detroit Lions get into? Then with the way they've redone the schedule in recent years where you're playing a division opponent that you close out the season, I want to know if it's going to be the Vikings, the Bears, or the Packers. And then the other things you want to find out, this is down the road, who's going to play quarterback for teams like the Packers. There's been so much intrigue in the league and all that. So there's just a multitude of things that I think about.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of storylines to follow when it comes to the NFC North this season. You mentioned it, what happens with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, but also a new quarterback in Chicago via the draft, Justin Fields.
That's one thing I was wondering too. Are we going to see him the first time the Lions play the Bears, the second time they play the Bears, both times, or not at all? Just the whole thing really to me is really, really interesting.
Absolutely. And it could be an indicator of whether the Lions see him once, twice, or, at all this season based on at what point in the schedule those Bears games are. So that's something to keep an eye on. Something to keep an eye on is those Green Bay games as well. And gentlemen, something that I look for when we look at the schedule is when that bye week is. The last couple of years, the Lions have had quite an early bye, which kind of makes the end of that season a grind because you have so many games in a row. So I like to look at when that bye week falls because you kind of get a feel for when those players will get a break, when you'll have players get time to rest up and recover from any injuries you might be experiencing. And Tim, I think that's going to be very important this year, considering the extra game in the season.
Yeah, it's a longer season. And so, coaches, if you talk to them, they normally like to see that bye week, right around somewhere mid-season. I think the last few years, it's been the fourth or fifth week for the Lions. And like you said, that just makes a really long haul there. You like to play half your season, get a bye, get kind of a system reset, get healthy. And then, now you're ready for your stretch run. And so we'll see where that lies with the Lions. I think probably Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes are hoping that's more mid-season than it's been in the previous years where it's been the first 2 months of the season.
All right, speaking of that extra game in the season, we now know that the NFL has gone to a 17-game season for the 2021 playing season. Mike, how does that change the schedule when you have 17 games instead of 16?
Well, one thing, we'll never have a team win the division and make the playoffs at 8-8 again. That's for sure. That just can't happen. Now, one thing, by the way, when you're talking about the bye week, what about writer's cramp? I think about that too. I need a little bit of a break too, But all of that stuff, Tori and Tim, there's so many things, and you don't leave anything out. You think of one thing and it gives you a memory of another. It really does.
And I think one quick thing to add there too is just how it's going to play out. Obviously with uneven number of games, you're going to have uneven home and road games. And just how that plays out, just for the fans here, is the AFC. All the AFC teams got the home game this year because that 17th game is an opponent from the AFC. And so how that's going to work is basically it's going to rotate every year. So the Lions will have 9 road games, 8 home games this year. It'll be the opposite next year, and then so forth and so on. So it's going to be an even spread throughout. The AFCs get the home game this year, but the NFC, the Lions included, will get that next year. So the Lions will have 9 home games next year.
Yeah, Tim, I think that's a very important clarification, because I think a lot of us are still wrapping our minds around a 17-game season and how that works. Help us understand how the Lions ended up with the Broncos as that extra game this year.
Yeah, basically it's going to how it works kind of in the NFC, and how the schedule works is obviously you have a rotating schedule of who you play in the NFC North, the NFC South, the NFC East, and the 2 that you don't play. So for example, the Lions play the NFC West, I believe, this year. So they'll play the 4 teams in the NFC West. And what happens is when you play, you're going to still play a team from the NFC East and NFC South, and it basically is going to fall in where you finish. So the Lions finished last in the NFC North, obviously, last year. So they're going to play the last place team in the NFC East. They're going to play the last place team in the NFC South. And it's the same formula with that one game over in the AFC. It's going to be rotating between the divisions with the AFC, one of the divisions that you don't play all 4 teams, but it's going to align as well as where you finish in the division. So one of those AFC opponents you're going to play are going to be in the same position that you finished in your division. So Broncos finished last in the AFC West. Lions finished last in the NFC North. And so that's why you get the Broncos, and it'll be that way every year. And then, like I mentioned, the NFC teams will get the home game in that matchup next year.
Yeah, good stuff there, Tim. Yeah, definitely. It helps us wrap our minds around why exactly things are scheduled the way that they are scheduled. When the NFL announced that they were going to that 17th game season, a lot of people assumed that Lions Broncos was going to be week 7 or week 18, because that was just the extra week on the season. But that's not how it works. We'll find out tonight when that game exactly is going to be. 18 weeks of the season, 17 games. We'll see how it all plays out. Tim, you mentioned the NFC West and how that's the one of the divisions the Lions will be playing against this year. And we already know one of those matchups. That is going to be happening in week 1, Lions versus San Francisco 49ers. That is the home opener for the Detroit Lions. That is the one game that we got to have a little sneak preview of the schedule earlier in the day. Mike, what do you think we should expect from that week 1 game?
Well, you're looking at a 49ers team that thinks that last season's 6-10 record was an aberration, and it probably was, because they had so many injuries into key players like Nick Bosa and Kittle's their tight end. For example, Bosa, the year before, they were 13-3. They had 49 sacks. Last year they dropped to 6-10. They had 30. He had 25 quarterback hits the year before. He had 5 last year. So when you lose primetime players for a period of time and he missed 13 games, it really has an effect on your team. So you want to see, from the 49ers perspective, you want to see if those guys who are injured come back at full speed on opening day. You hope, from a Lions perspective, you hope that it takes them some time to get back into game shape and game, just the game tempo and all that. But you also want to know who's going to be their starting quarterback. I'd be surprised if it's Trey Lance, the young man from North Dakota State that they drafted 3rd overall. I'm pretty sure it'll be Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's a little bit of intrigue there, because we really didn't know until draft day that Lance was the guy that they wanted. But that's one to keep an eye on in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to be a storyline when that week 1 game rolls around. Tim, we've kind of looked at the matchups a little bit. We don't know the dates yet, but kind of let us know which matchups you're looking at and you're excited to see when they are.
Well, obviously the LA Rams, the Stafford golf one, that's going to be on everybody's mind. And Thanksgiving, that's always a big one, like Mike mentioned off the top. And I think one interesting point about that San Francisco game, a statistic I ran across was since 2000, West Coast teams are 72-86 when they play a 1 p.m. Eastern time zone game. The 49ers during that stretch, 16-31. Not a great matchup for them week 1 to have to travel all the way east.
All right, well, let's find out who the Lions play week 2 and forward. It is officially 7:45, so it is time for us to reveal the 2021 schedule. Take a look.
3rd down and 4. Got it back, looks, hit, knocked the ball free on the ground. The ball is free. The Lions say they've got it at the bottom of the pile, and they do, inside the 10-yard line. They've got it back. Here they come.
Turkey season's open.
Bah! Bah!
Oh, but oh.
Hey Roy, Coach Campbell here. Hey, I'm over here checking out the 2021 schedule, and I noticed we got the Vikings up next. You know, you might want to give your buddy Victor the Viking a heads up that we're coming, and he better watch out for those caps between his ankles and his thighs.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! TJ Hawkins, they did it!
That is good stuff. I always love seeing what NFL teams do for the schedule release video. Great work, as always, from our Lions new media crew creating that schedule release video. Guys, the NFL schedule is out. Tim, what's your first reaction?
Oh, there's a lot to piece together there. You know, obviously we talked about San Francisco. I think, you know, Green Bay, you know, like Mike talked about, you talk about wins and winner of the national games and Thanksgiving. I think Green Bay, Monday night, week 2, that's obviously a big game early in the year for Dan Campbell, national audience. And so that's a big one, you know, getting Chicago on Thanksgiving. I think that's great. And we talked about the bye ahead of time and how it was early. What a terrific break for the Lions, getting that bye week 9. That's perfect, right in the middle of the season. So you get 8 games, a break, a reset, and then you can make that stretch one, your final 9 games. I think, closing at home against Green Bay, that's always nice if you're in the thick of things to have that home. And, maybe just a quick thing. I think it's a tough first 3 with San Francisco, Green Bay, and Baltimore. Those are teams expected to do, pretty well in the NFC and AFC. I mean, those are Super Bowl contenders. And look, you get 3 of your final 5 are on the road, 3 of your first 5 on the road. And so, Dan Campbell's going to have to navigate that early on and late. But, overall, I think it works out. There's nothing crazy in terms of travel, 3 road games, anything like that. It's a pretty mixed bag, and it should be fun to see how it plays out.
All right, you guys are taking a look at the Lions schedule weeks 1 through 8. Tim, you talked about that tough stretch to open the season, but I think a lot of people are circling week 7 right there, Lions versus Rams. Mike, how about you?
I've got it circled. I just wondered when they were going to play it, but obviously it's really one of the most probably anticipated matchups, but 2 people who've never played each other before. There's no rematch here. This is a one-off. And with Matthew Stafford, he was here for 12 years. 12 straight years he was the opening day quarterback for the Detroit Lions, and probably one of the big trades of the National Football League offseason. So with Matthew Stafford going to the Rams to play quarterback there, Lions get Jared Goff. To me, I think it's just a really cool thing.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the second half of the season. You guys saw weeks 1 through 8. So let's take a look at the second half of the season, that week 9 bye. Here's the schedule, weeks 9 through 16. A couple of games there stick out. There's that Denver Broncos game that we talked about. That is the bonus game for the Lions in 2021. That is going to be in week 14 on December 12th. I know a lot of Lions fans were asking me about that one when that one was announced, because a lot of Lions fans over there on the West Coast want to make sure that they get to a game, and that is another opportunity for them. Tim, what stands out to you about this half of the schedule?
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting coming out of the bye. We talked about that week 9 bye, week 10 at Pittsburgh, week 11 at Cleveland, right? So you got 2 consecutive road games coming out of your bye week against unfamiliar AFC opponents. And then, boom, you're home for Thanksgiving and home against Minnesota. So I think that's a key 4-game stretch there with 2 road games coming out the bye, and then 2 consecutive home games against division opponents. And so, obviously, if you're going to compete in the NFC North, if you're going to try to win that division, you've got to play well against teams in the division. So I think that's a critical stretch there. You get time to kind of, reset, get healthy, and then boom, road against unfamiliar AFC opponents. And then you flip around, got a short week in there with Thanksgiving, got a mini bye, and then Minnesota comes in. I think that's a really key 4-game stretch coming out of the bye there. I think that'll make or break this season, depending on where they are at the halfway point.
All right, we could only fit 16 weeks in those 2 graphics. So let's take a look at the final 2 games of the 2021 season. It's actually the 2022 stretch of this season. You got the Seahawks on January 2nd. That's one of my favorite cities to travel to for road games. But then you get to end the season at home against the Packers. Mike, what do you think of the 2022 part of this schedule?
Well, I think there's a repetition of a theme there. And I have to back up to the first half of the schedule too, because the Lions have 3 back-to-back road games and only 1 back-to-back home game. So it's a little tougher to get momentum when you don't have consecutive home games. So if they can get rolling, then they go right back on the road. And I think that's probably a little bit of a disadvantage for a team with a new coach, new coaching, an entirely new staff, new quarterback, and all of that. Now, look, it's not going to make or break them, but it's one little disadvantage that I don't think. You can't plan on it. There's no way to get around it. It's just one of those things. You talked about the Denver game. Listen, Tori, some of those fans are from Detroit. They want to stop at Vail. That's before they go on to Denver. They really do. They want to get out there and have some fun. But look, I think that's a neat addition there, playing the Denver Broncos. You're going to play a 17th season. Play a team that's different, one that you haven't played, that you don't play every year.
Yeah, absolutely. It will definitely be interesting to see how those 2 games play out. But we want to hear from the fans. We heard from Tim and Mike. Let's hear what the fans are thinking about what games they're looking forward to most. You guys have been voting on Twitter all night on which game you're looking forward to most this season. Your options were that home opener against San Francisco. You also had an option of Thanksgiving, of Lions versus Rams, or maybe you had another one that you were looking forward to most. And I think it's clear most of you have that week 7 game, Lions at Rams, circled on your schedule. 54% of you voted for that game. A lot of people looking forward to Thanksgiving as well. I know a lot of you have not missed a Thanksgiving Day game at Ford Field in quite some time up until last season. So hopefully you'll be able to be back in Ford Field for this one. And if you guys want to have this schedule on your calendar, you can scan that QR code that's on your screen in the sidebar right now. Scan that QR code. It will take you to an instant download of the Lions schedule, and it will download that schedule right into your phone. So it is there for you. You never have to worry about any kind of schedule conflicts. Make sure you're not scheduling any weddings or anything too exciting on Lions game day weekend. So you know what's going down and what road trips you need to plan for 2021. Guys, we talked a little bit at the top of the show about the NFC North opponents and what to look out for there. And how we were kind of interested to see which quarterbacks the Lions might be facing around the NFC North, considering some of the storylines that are out there right now. But we talked specifically about Justin Fields and how many times the Lions could see him going up against Chicago. What are your thoughts on that, Tim? Do you think the Lions might see some Justin Fields this season?
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think that we will see Justin Fields for their Week 4 matchup in Chicago.
Wow.
I think it'll be that early. I just think he's a dynamic kind of player. Obviously you've got veteran experience with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, but I just think when it's all said and done, just the way this league is trending and just how dynamic of a player he can be, I think they'll try to get him on the field early. And I think when they do, he'll show that he can make plays for them. And I wouldn't be surprised if within the first month, the future of the Chicago Bears is actually on the field and it's Justin Fields.
Wow. Well, we will see who is on the field at quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. That's another one that's a little bit up in the air. It's all conjecture at this point. We really don't have any sort of official news or anything. But Mike, if you had to guess who's playing quarterback for the Green Bay Packers in 2021?
Well, I wouldn't put any money on my guess either way, Tori, but I still think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. I really do. I mean, there's so much for both sides to gain just to bury the hatchet and get on the others. But you've got to say that the Packers signed Blake Bortles today for some reason, or at least they said they were going to sign him. He's an experienced quarterback. He's played in playoff games before with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now his career hasn't gone the way he probably expected when he was drafted 3rd overall. But I just cannot see them going forward without one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who's getting older, 37, 38 years old, but still playing like he's in his prime.
Well, 2 very important matchups with the Packers on the schedule. First off, in week 2 on Monday Night Football, that is the Lions' only primetime game this season. Of course, outside of that Thanksgiving Day game that's always at noon on Thanksgiving Day, the Lions will face off against the Packers on Monday Night Football in week 2. But then they also get to finish the season against the Packers in week 18. I'm still getting used to saying that. Still a little bit strange to say week 18. But Tim, those are 2 key matchups against a very important opponent.
Yeah, like I said off the top, week 2, you get that national audience and you've only had one game in the bag if you're Dan Campbell. And so it'll be interesting to see how they come out and perform in front of a national audience. And I think it's a little bit strange that you don't get to see them until all the way week 18. So it's week 2 and week 18. How different will both of these teams be? When you're talking about 16 weeks apart, that's a lot of football in between there. That's a lot of injuries. That's a lot of things that can happen. A lot of player development. And so I think the interesting thing with that matchup is you can play week 2 and you could face an entirely different team week 18, depending on how the rest of the season goes. So, that's a big spread there, I think more than what we usually see. And so that'll be interesting because those could be 2 very, very different games with the Green Bay Packers this year, just because of how spread apart those contests are.
Yeah, I think Lions fans might have a little bit of a taste in their mouth about Monday Night Football in Green Bay, considering the last time that happened. Maybe that'll get washed out this time. What do you say, Tim?
Yeah, it didn't end the way the Lions fans hoped. I'm sure those guys in zebra shirts, the Lions fans weren't too happy with them. But look, I think that's a statement game, right? You can go on the road. You beat the division, winners from last year, really the predominant team in the NFC North for the last decade, and you go on the road. And I think if the Lions could somehow go on the road in Green Bay, if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback and win that game, I think that's a huge statement for Dan Campbell and where this team is headed, and also a big boost for those players. I think that's a buy-in game for the players. Holy cow, all right, let's go. We believe in this guy. Look what he just helped us do. And so that's a huge early game for me. I think it's a barometer game for this coaching staff, for this team. It's a rebuild team. It's a new culture. And so let's see what you can do against the best on the road in front of a big stage.
All right, Mike, here's a question for you. When you look at this schedule panned out, it's May, so still early. What game do you feel like might be the toughest matchup on the Lions 2021 calendar?
The toughest matchup? Well, that's a good one. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Packers in week 2. It just, you know, the history of the teams, but I'm counting this on Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback. He's really had their number lately. They had a good little run there 4 or 5 years ago. Remember when they beat them in coming out of the bye that year? They started 1-7 and came out and beat them and really started, you know, recovering, almost made the playoffs that year. But the Packers have really been tough on the Detroit Lions. And I think that is really, for some reason, that's their nemesis, has been for 2.5 decades. And I think it's still, for whatever reason, the toughest game on the schedule.
Tim, do you have a different thought? Do you agree? Is it that week 2 game, or do you have a different idea of what might be the toughest one?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, when I start to look at the schedule, I think, you know, a couple things that, you know, I talked about that statistic about San Francisco and West Coast teams coming east, but I bet that applies too with East Coast teams going west. And so you look at just some of the schedule at LA Rams, right? That's a long trip. At Denver, long trip. At Seattle, long trip. And for me, I think Seattle is such a difficult place to play. And that's such a long trip. And it's just a long weekend. Normally you're going a day ahead of time. You're just kind of off your schedule a little bit. We saw what happened last time the Lions went there. I believe it was the playoff game in 2016. And that wasn't a good showing for them. And so, you know, I think that one probably to me stands out if Russell Wilson is still there, and that team's probably humming along and looking to probably do something in the NFC North to clinch a playoff spot. I think week 17 in Seattle, that's a pretty tough matchup.
All right, here's another question for you guys. A lot of people are looking at this schedule, expecting that fans will be allowed back in stadiums this year. And they're saying, hey, I missed being out of the stadium last year. I want to go to a game this year. I want to figure out which game I'm going to take my family to, whether I live in Detroit or I live in a different city. And I just want to circle a game on the calendar and say, hey, this is the one that I want to go to. Mike, if you're giving advice to one of those families who's kind of looking at what city might be the most fun to visit, what matchup might be the most interesting, which one do you say makes a really good road trip for a family looking to come to a game?
Well, I'm going to pick Green Bay again because I'll tell you, just because of it's sort of a romantic trip there. It's one of the founding sites in the National Football League, and I've always said, this was before the Big Ten had expanded, but I always said that Green Bay was like the 11th team in the Big Ten Conference. It was more like a college crowd than it was a pro crowd, and the fans are so nice. It's just you get down there in that field there and look up and see those 80,000 fans, and you really can think back to the old NFL films, videos of the frozen tundra and the snow. You can do that in November, December, January, doesn't matter, but you just get that feeling that, hey, this is really something special.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Lambeau Field is a special place to catch a game. I personally look at the calendar and say, hey, I'm pretty glad that one falls in September and not in December, as someone who's out there on the field, you know, towards the ends of games. So I do enjoy seeing that there might be a little less snow in the forecast at that point in the year. But if I'm looking at this schedule, you know, several of those West Coast games are definite possibilities for really fun road trips. Denver is a really fun city. We talked about how a lot of Lions fans were excited that one was added to the schedule. Lots of great places to eat in Denver. Denver is a fun city to go to. Go see the Lions play at Mile High Stadium. But one of my favorite road trips of the year is that Seattle game. I love traveling to Seattle. I think it's such a fun city. You go, you know, to the fish market there in Seattle, and you get to see all the 12s in action. And so it's such a fun stadium. that really lives up to its reputation as being one of the loudest and rowdiest stadiums in the league. We'll see what fan capacities look like in 2021. But hey, that stadium is one of the coolest ones, in my opinion, to visit outside of Ford Field. Now, this is if you're looking to go to a road game. Tim, what's your call on the funnest game on this schedule?
For me, it's week 1. It's at Ford Field. It's San Francisco. I think we can all admit just 2020 football wasn't as fun. It just wasn't. We were all at Ford Field, and it was a weird atmosphere. There weren't fans. It wasn't loud, piped in crowd, and everything that went with that. It wasn't normal. It wasn't football, and it wasn't fun. And so, I think hopefully if vaccines are trending where they are and things with the pandemic continue the way they are, and we can get fans back in Ford Field, I think that week 1 crowd could be really ruckus, and it could be fun. And look, you've got a new coaching staff in Dan Campbell. You've got a new front office with Brad Holmes. And so you've got, this kind of new culture, this new thing in Detroit, and you can kick it off at home with a full stadium, which you haven't had in a year. I think the atmosphere could be electric week 1. And to me, if I'm a fan, I want to be part of that, where football's back in Detroit, and you're hopefully kicking off something special with this new regime. And that's the one to be at if it's me.
I like it. I think that that's a really good reasoning to go to a football game. And of course, lots of things to see at Ford Field, lots of things to do here in Detroit. And if you don't live in the city, or maybe you live a short ways away and haven't made it to a game yet, highly, highly recommend getting a seat at a game in Ford Field this season. We definitely hope that we see fans back in the stands, because we missed you guys last year. And hopefully the 3 of us will be able to be at all the games and be on the road again as well, because that was different for us this year too. And Tim, you talked about this being that first game on the schedule being the first one under a new regime, but the Lions are also facing off against a couple of teams that are, having new regimes in there as well. We talked about some of the quarterback changes that might be abreast, but there's also some head coaching changes in some of these teams that the Lions are up against. The Philadelphia Eagles is one of those. What stands out to you about some of the different changes on different teams that different teams are going through, in addition to what the Lions have gone through as far as change goes in their building this offseason?
Well, it's a feeling out process, and, obviously some of the off-season programs are going to be a little bit different. And when you're a new regime, you want to be on the field, you want everybody there, and you want to get a head start. We'll kind of see how the protocols and how that goes as we get through May and June. But, I think it'll be important for the new regimes that the preseason is back. I think the NFL is going to release those preseason games here in probably the next week or so. But it's good, I think, for the new regimes to get that part of the schedule back. You're going to be able to evaluate your guys. And, you mentioned Philadelphia, that falls week 8. And I think another one there is Atlanta. That's week 16. Right. And so I think, the interesting part of that is you're not seeing a new regime early. I think that would be an interesting dynamic if it was week 1, week 2, week 3, as you're still kind of feeling out your team a little bit. Week 8, I think you got a pretty good idea of who you are and what you are as a football team. And when you talk about Atlanta, I think week 16, you have a really good idea of who you are and what you are and what your personnel is and how they fit your schemes. And so I don't think it'll be too crazy this year, because none of those are early in the year. You've got a mid-season, late-season matchup between new head coaches. I think they'll have a pretty good feel for their team. And while those will still be interesting matchups, I don't think it'll be as new and different as some people might think that matchup might be for first-year head coaches.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there, Tim. And obviously, Lions fans enjoyed how that last game against the Falcons went. Of course, everyone remembers that accidental touchdown scored by the Falcons that allowed the Lions to come back and win that game. I think that might have been my favorite one of the 2020 season, just because of the wild ending to that one. And, Mike, it always seems like Lions-Falcons games tend to have some bizarre endings to them, don't they?
Yeah, and just before that, not too far before that, is the Arizona Cardinals. I think we're going to play them every year now for the rest of my life. But nothing could starting your season with a tie that was a bummer. That really felt like a loss. And maybe you guys have a different feeling, but I just thought the Lions came home feeling like they lost a game. But that's you can get just unusual endings, unusual finishes, and unusual plays in all of these games.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And something to remember as well is that the preseason is just going to be 3 games long this year. That's because of the addition to the schedule, that extra game in week 18, the 17th game on the season. Only 3 preseason games. So, Tim, do you expect that kind of that week 2 of the preseason is going to be the one that's usually that week 3 where we see more of the starters out on the field, kind of getting a feel and getting prepared for the season?
Yeah, probably. I think it'll be interesting to see how, Dan Campbell and head coaches around the league, treat that. Typically it was week 3, right? When you had 4, and then 4, you sat all your starters, and, you kind of saw, you wanted to play guys to see who could make that final roster spot. Now, I'm not quite sure the dates yet. And so if the dates are still the same, if you're taking away basically the first game and you're having the second, third, and the fourth be the week before the regular season, or the third be the week before the regular season starts, I could certainly see what you mentioned there, the second one being the run through with the starters, and then they'll sit the week before. I guess it just kind of depends on how the timing and the dates are going to play out. If they play a preseason game a week before the preseason, you're not going to see starters. You're just not. No head coach is going to take that risk. And so I would expect, the lead up, you're going to get some time with the starters week 1. You're going to get probably a half week 2, and week 3 is going to be like we see in years past with that 4th preseason game. You're going to see a lot of the guys, at that spot where they're trying to make the 53 roster, and teams are trying to decide between those last couple spots. That'll probably be how the preseason plays out, but we'll have to kind of see where the schedule falls, in terms of the dates with that.
All right, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks and which ones we'll be watching for. Another guy who's been the talk of the NFL is Lamar Jackson, and that's the quarterback the Lions will be facing in week 3 when they take on the Baltimore Ravens. Mike, what do you make of that matchup and the kind of quarterback that Lamar Jackson is and the talent that he's shown?
He's as close to unique, dictionary definition of unique, one of a kind, as any quarterback I've ever seen. But there are a lot of guys who could scramble, but this guy, he can run, not just scramble, but he can take off on designed runs, and you can't get him. When he gets, he'll hit a seam, make a quick cut, a jump cut, and he's gone, and he's on his way to the end zone. And he's got super speed, he's got super anticipation. Just he's a different quarterback and a great quarterback. And look, he's got a couple of things to add to his arsenal there in throwing the ball. But when he does, you're going to see a player who really, in my opinion, is going to stand out as one of the top 2, 3, 4 of the National Football League. I think he's fun to watch. It'd probably be a nightmare to play against, but from my perspective, I just have to watch.
Well, it sure caps off a very tough 1, 2, 3 stretch there to open the season for the Detroit Lions. But we're excited to see this season kick off any way you slice it. So with that, let's take it to our final segment of the night, where we take a look at our game of the year. All 3 of us have picked different games of the year. So Tim, I'll start with you. What would you consider your game of the year for 2021?
I talked about it a little bit earlier, but for me, it's San Francisco. It's game 1, right? It's start of the new year. Everybody's got hope, right? Everybody's 0-0. You're going to win the NFC. You're going to go to the Super Bowl. You're ready. You're going to go be one of those teams that goes worst to first. We see it every year. And so that's the excitement building into week 1. And so for me, and what I talked about earlier too, with the hope that there's fans there, and you're just kicking off kind of a new regime, a new coaching staff. Hopefully, the pandemic is starting to be behind us, and there's an excitement in Detroit in mid-September when football's back. And to me, the most exciting game is going to be that week 1, just because of the newness of everything and the hope that week 1 brings for all 32 teams in the NFL.
I like it. That's definitely a good choice for game of the year. Now, Mike, it is your turn. What's your selection for game of the year?
Well, I'm going to shock all of you by saying it's not the LA Rams and Matthew Stafford. In my heart, it is. I confess. Okay, you don't have to waterboard me. It's Matthew Stafford. But really, from a football sense, I think it's the Pittsburgh Steelers coming out of the bye. And I think Tim kind of read my mind a little bit on this. I think we spent too much time together here. But it's week 8, and I think it's the start of 2 road games: the Steelers and then the Browns. And I think it's a chance for the Lions to, in some ways, redefine their season, or to more of the same. In other words, if they got a good run going and they're 5-3 or 4-4 or 3-5, they have a chance to become a contender. They come out of the bye and they can really make a stand and win a couple of games. So the Steelers, it's a tough game. Even when they're not at their best, they've been tough on visiting teams. and especially tough on the Detroit Lions. But for me, that could lead to an awful lot of good things for the Detroit Lions if they can get through that game.
Fans, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of an inside action on this show here. We all had to pick our game of the year, and we couldn't all pick the same one. And I told Mike, I said, Mike, if you want to take Lions at Rams, you can take Lions at Rams. I know, you enjoy talking about the quarterback situation, but he said, no, I'm going to take Lions at Steelers. So that leaves me with Lions at Rams. Of course, we had to talk about that one. The big quarterback matchup between these two quarterbacks who are playing against their former teams. Matthew Stafford in that LA Rams jersey. Man, that is still strange to see. And then you got Jared Goff there in that number 16 Lions jersey. That game is October 24th at 4:05 p.m. on Fox, Week 7. Those two quarterbacks facing off is going to be a fun matchup. I think all eyes around the NFL are going to be on that game and seeing how those two guys are playing with their new teams and then facing off against their former teams. But this is not just Matthew Stafford's former team and Jared Goff's former team. This is also Brad Holmes' former team. This is Michael Brocker's former team. This is defensive backs coach Aubrey Pleasant's former team. There are a lot of Lions-Rams connections, and Stafford and Goff are not the only ones. So, gentlemen, I think that it was obvious that we had to include this one. Tim, what do you make of this matchup?
It should be a fun one. It really, really, really should. And I think it'll be an interesting one for Jared Goff. Going back to LA, that's a place he had a lot of success. I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago covering the Super Bowl. I talked to Jared Goff, and look, he took his team to a Super Bowl just a couple of years ago. And he's one of 4 active quarterbacks that have thrown for at least 3,800 yards and 20 touchdowns in each of the last 4 years. I think Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and I can't think of the 4th guy on the list, but I bet he's pretty good. And so, I think there's a chip on his shoulder. I think when you talk to him here, just, about being traded and about, the Rams deciding that he wasn't the guy that could take him to the promised land and that Matthew Stafford was, I think, there's a chip on his shoulder. He's only 26 years old. He's got a lot left in the tank. And I consider him kind of mad. And I like that about a quarterback. And I think, going home, going to a place that he was drafted number 1 overall, he took the team to the Super Bowl, had a lot of success, won some playoff games, and was kind of discarded. I think there's going to be a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I think he's going to have a lot to prove that game. And it should be a really, really fun matchup.
I got to say, I'm pretty excited about going to SoFi Stadium as well. That is one that I have not marked off my stadium list. And by the looks of it, Mike, it sure looks like a nice one.
It absolutely does. There's just something different about it. Seattle's older now, but that stadium there, it's different too. I feel like I'm in a flying saucer. It's really got just a cool design to it. That, to me, that's probably the most different of all the somewhat new stadiums in the National Football League.
Well, certainly will be exciting for the Lions to go see that stadium this season. Guys, we've got a lot to look forward to, but we also asked our fans a trivia question at the beginning of the show, and I'm going to quiz you guys a little bit right now and see if you might know the answer to this one. We asked the fans if they knew which year began the scheduling of the Thursday night kickoff game, which indicates the start of the regular season. Do either of you know which year the season began to start with a Thursday night game?
See, I didn't know I'd be quizzed here. I would have got our lead man, Derek Heitman, here. I got the inside information here on that. No, I don't got it. I'm going to take a true guess here. I'm going to say, I'm going to say 2010.
Mike, any thoughts?
Is he right or wrong? Is he high or low?
I feel like Regis Philbin here. Is that your final answer?
Hang on a second. I'll say 2002.
Well, gentlemen, Mike O'Hara is correct. The correct answer is 2002. Leave it to our historian to know the answer. Mike, you are correct.
They've been doing that long? I'm actually surprised by that.
Tori, my only problem is I only had 5 black chips on that one.
Should have put more in because you were correct. That was the answer to the trivia question that we asked our fans. They've been chiming in the comments, and you guys have been participating in our poll as well over on Twitter. And we just appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with us here on our schedule release show. Make sure you download that Lions schedule to your calendars, make your plans, and hopefully we will see you at a game this season. We appreciate you tuning in to our Detroit Lions schedule release show presented by Lions Experiences, and hopefully we'll see you at a Lions game soon.